records, amazing gospel records, all sorts of things. And this next thing is a gospel record by a group called the Rising Stars. That I have a hard time counting it. I still am sort of fascinated by the time.
There's a and there's something in my life that makes me feel like find a way to be at rest. Every morning when I rise, something moves before my eyes. Makes me feel like find a way to be at rest, to be at rest. Forgive thyself one way, forgive thyself one way, when your faith fly away, to be at rest, to be at rest. Forgive thyself one way, forgive thyself one way, when your faith fly away, to be at rest, to be at rest. When your faith fly away, to be at rest, to be at rest. When our faith fly away, to be at rest, to be at rest. We're loved and hard, all the traveler, all people to tell where you are, all people to tell where you travel, all the distant and there was a man so strong that he stood on the holy ground, that his holy ghost will help me, I will not fall in love.
So, pretty far out. Here's a little piece of Sidney Bechet playing the contrabass sarrusophone, which I eventually got. I have a contrabass sarrusophone that I found many, many years later, and I spent, half a lifetime trying to find one after hearing this record. And here's a fifth thing. I know they're a little bit random, but these are my favorite records in the world. This is Stravinsky conducting just one part of the Rite of Spring, which has always haunted me. Something about the E-flat clarinet and the bass clarinet, 2 octaves apart, that just always gets me. So, you can see how, maybe you don't notice that in the music that I play for you, but those are what sort of, if I had to pick 5 things to take away and sort of examine carefully, those would certainly be, first choices there. If you do that same thing, if you pick out, I know my choices are unusual, but everybody's different. If you took your 5 favorite records, maybe it's a song by Journey, who cares, whatever you like, and a Harry Belafonte record, those slow movement from Brahms' Third Symphony or something. I don't know. Everybody's got something different. If you sort of listen to that and really try to understand what about it you really, really like, then I think you can sort of create an original music for yourself. That becomes your own vernacular, your own original ideas and your own original music. but it's based on what you've heard and what you know and what you love. And it's most important is to figure out what it is you actually like and how to gravitate towards it. Any other questions?
So was that your connection with Tower Power being in the Oakland area, or did you meet them later, or
I knew them from there.
from the get-go?
Yeah. My mother knew them, had some business with them. My friend Bert, the saxophone player, knew them. They were a well-known entity. I used to go to hear them play. Used to dance at their gigs. Then they asked my band that I had a band a couple years before I joined them that was playing local clubs, and we would open for them. They asked us to open for them. Then when they let their saxophone player go, they hired me. So I was only 18, I was pretty young. But I had already I had dropped out of school when I was 14, so I had been doing nothing but playing, and I was ready. Very much ready. I felt that I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a musician, and I devoted pretty much all my time to it. So by the time they got me, I had put my 10,000 hours in for sure, and was ready to go. Any other questions? Yeah?
What's your favorite band?
My favorite band? Oh, I don't know. I mean, these days, bands? God, I don't know. Don't really have one. I don't really listen to people that particular way. You know, I mean, I have passing interests, but nothing that's all.
Do you digest any new modern pop music in your
I listen to it all the time. Yeah.
Do you find anyone in particular that has any artistic merit over any?
Well, you know, pop music has become the realm of the producer, and I love Dr. Dre. I think Dre's awesome. Huge Dre fan. Let's see. I have a friend who it might be just because we're friends that I like him so much, but Lukasz Gottwald, Dr. Luke, he's got 3 hits in the top 10 right now, but he's an old friend of mine. I like his production style a lot. It's very pop and very crass on one level, but it's also very, the way that he's processing the sound I find really interesting. He's got like a Katy Perry record on now, and he's got a Britney Spears record, and he's got, I think, a Kesha record from him. So, I played on one of the songs on the Katy Perry album. Anybody else? Yeah?
Have you ever played, I know how you play, like, jazz and stuff. Have you ever played any more modern music?
Yes. Very modern music.
Right.
Some of my own devising and some with other people, too. But, yeah, I'll play a little bit and then we still have some time. More questions? Yeah?
Do you want to write like interest-wise?
Well, if I had to give up one, it would be the writing, and I'd keep the playing. Because I can't live without a saxophone playing. But I like doing both of them quite a bit. They complement one another. But as I get older, I'm leaning more and more towards spending less time writing and more time playing, just because I'll probably be able to write until I'm really, really old, but I don't know how much longer I'll be able to play the way I play, so I might as well get all the playing in I can while I'm still in one piece. Anybody else? Yeah?
What's your exact setup?
Oh, it's a Mark 6. It's a Paris Mark 6. I had a manager for a while. When I was with the band that I was talking about before, he was a saxophone player with Slime and Family Stone. And he had been over in Europe touring, and somebody dropped a bass amplifier in the saxophone. So he bought another saxophone while he was there. So it's like a 444 pitch French Paris Sommer saxophone that he gave me. He just gave it. So that saxophone used to play in Slime and Family Stone. And the mouthpiece was given to me by a guy named Danny Hall. It was a band called Cold Blood. I was about 16. He said he thought it might be helpful for what I was trying to do, and he gave it to me. It's a Berg Larson SMS 130 over 0 mouthpiece. And I'm using a Van Doren 3.5 bass clarinet, which I trimmed slightly to make it fit the edge of the mouthpiece. I have a reed trimmer that I searched for years to find that actually fits the tip of the mouthpiece. So I trim off not even the whole, just the edges of the tip, just to make it so it's a perfect fit.
how did the SNL gig come about?
Well, I just kept saying yes to all sorts of interesting things. I mean, I have a motto, which is like, if you want to succeed in the music business, it's 3 steps. It's say yes when they ask you, show up on time, and never complain. And you know, all those things eventually got me there. I was, the way it worked, I'd done a performance of some of my music in a small theater. A choreographer heard the music and was interested in having a recording of it. And I said I would do it, and I had to find an engineer in a studio. So I went looking, and I made about 10 phone calls to engineers, and found somebody who was willing to do it for the budget I had, finally. But one of the guys that couldn't do it worked for a remix guy named Arthur Baker, who was like the biggest remix guy in the 80s in New York. And he remixed like Hall & Oates and all these other projects. You know, David Bowie, lots of 80s acts. And he was managed by a guy named Tommy Mottola. Tommy Mottola was also the manager for Hall & Oates. There's a connection there. And my dispossessions, you know, the engineer worked for him that didn't take my job, worked for Arthur, recommended me to Arthur. Arthur hired me to do some stuff, and it was crazy what he had me doing. It turns out I was making samples that ended up on like 40 or 50 different records, and without even knowing it. But he was also managed by this guy, Tommy Mottola. And he told Tommy about me, and Tommy told Hall & Oates about me, and they hired me to do this gig. And this gig was supposed to be a benefit for the United Negro College Fund at the Apollo Theater. And I got up there, and there was a sound truck parked outside, and there was cameras and all this stuff. And Eddie Kendricks and David Ruffin were there from The Temptations. And it turned out to be like a triple platinum album and an HBO special that ran for a couple of years. But I'd already made my deal, like for a couple $100. And then they asked me if I could write some arrangements, which I did on the floor of the Apollo Theater. And then they asked me if I could get some other horn players, and I made some phone calls to all my friends to come down. But anyhow, the guitar player in that band was G.E. Smith. G.E. Smith had formerly been married to Gilda Radner, who was one of the cast members from the first 5 years of the show. And when Lauren Michaels came back to produce the show again, he asked G.E. if he might be band leader, and G.E. said yes. And they brought Howard Shore along. Now, Howard Shore knew me he knew who I was because he was in a band called Lighthouse, which was a Canadian sort of version of Tower Power kind of thing. Yeah. So Howard knew who I was also, so I got called to the audition. It wasn't even much of an audition, it was just sort of show up, yeah, you're hired, you know, because G.E. already knew me. So it was just a weird series of connections with people. I mean, I'm telling you, you say yes to something and it tumbles down, and the next thing you know it turns into a million other things. You just got to be agreeable. You have to show up in time. The moment you're late, your employer starts to worry about what's going on, and they don't want to worry. Nobody wants to worry, and you can't complain, because as soon as you start complaining, it's like nobody wants to hear that. No one wants to hear complaint. They want you to show up and do your job and not complain. If you don't like the job, they call you back, say, God, I'd really love to do it, but I'm already booked on that day, and I can't. I'm really sorry, you know. But be really nice. Just say no, but say no only after you've discovered that it's a horrible job. I used to do this gig in New York that involved a bus ride that left Manhattan at 4 in the morning, arrived in Rocky Mount, North Carolina, middle of the next day, 13 hours later, did the sound check, did the gig, got back in the bus, went back to New York. And it was like $125. It was a baritone chair for Glenn Miller style thing, so you didn't need the baritone all the time. So I had to bring my alto, my baritone, my bass clarinet, my clarinet, and the flute. And all the stands for $125 and 13-hour bus rides, you know. But, you know, so, and after a while, I said, I can't do this anymore. This is too hard. It's like really excruciating, so I stopped doing it. But